Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy an Exchange 2016 Edge Transport Server. Now, I want to point out up front that this video is just going to focus on the deployment process. I'm going to deal with the Edge subscription separately in the next video. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the server that you're looking at on this screen is actually the Exchange 2016 mailbox server that we set up in the last video. And the reason why I've got that pulled up is because the very first thing that we need to do is to make sure that DNS name resolution is working between the two machines. And that's really simple to do. What I'm going to do is open up an administrative command prompt. I'm going to right click on the start button and open up command prompt admin. And I'm just going to see if I can ping the Edge transport server that we're going to be creating. So I'm just going to type ping. And the name of that server is E2K16Edge. And you can see that we're getting a reply, so DNS name resolution is working. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and I'll switch over to that server and we'll get started. So here we are on the Edge transport server. And if I right click on the start button and go to system, you can see that this computer is named E2K16Edge. And it's a member of a work group because remember, an Edge transport server can't be a domain member. If an Edge transport server were to be a domain member, that would defeat the entire purpose of creating an Edge transport server because you want the server to be isolated from your domain so as to give you an extra degree of security. So it is a member of a work group. Now, naming this server isn't the only thing that I've gone ahead and done. I've also installed the prerequisite software ahead of time just to save a little bit of time for you. And I've opened up the necessary firewall ports, so that way we can just jump right into the installation process. So what I'm going to do now is open up File Explorer, and I'll go into C. And here we have the Exchange Files folder. This is the same story as what you saw in the last video. Basically, I decompressed the Exchange installation media, and this is where the Exchange files were put. On your own system, your installation files may exist in a different location. For example, if you're installing off of an Exchange Server DVD, then your installation files will obviously be on that DVD. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in here, and I'm going to scroll down and run setup. And it takes just a second for things to get going. And after a brief delay, Windows has launched the Exchange Server 2016 Setup Wizard. And the very first thing that the wizard asks you is if you want to check for updates. Now, in a production environment, I strongly recommend going ahead and checking for updates. I'm not going to worry about that in this case because this is a lab environment, and before I started recording the video, I already checked for updates and there weren't any available. So I'm just going to choose the Don't Check for Updates Right Now option and click Next. And now there are some files that have to be copied. This process takes a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to pause the video while the file copy process completes. And after a couple of minutes, the file copy process has completed and now setup is being initialized. Depending on your hardware, this can also take a couple of minutes to complete. And now that setup has initialized, I'm taken to the Welcome to Microsoft Exchange Server 2016 introduction screen. Everything looks good here, nothing I really have to do, so I'm just going to click Next. And now I'm taken to the license agreement screen. I'm going to accept the license agreement and click Next. And now I'm prompted to either use the recommended settings or don't use the recommended settings. So if you look at the text here, you can see that Exchange Server will automatically check online for solutions when encountering errors and provide usage feedback to Microsoft to help improve future Exchange features. Well, that sounds great, but I'm setting this up in a lab environment, so I probably don't want usage statistics to get forwarded to Microsoft. So I'm going to choose Don't Use Recommended Settings. Now, in a production environment, it's entirely up to you which one of these options you choose. Exchange will function in exactly the same way, regardless of which option you choose. So I'm just going to click Next. And now I'm taken to the role selection screen. And remember, we're deploying an Edge transport server, so I'm going to choose the Edge transport role. And I want to make sure to select the automatically install Windows Server roles and features that are required to install Exchange Server checkbox. So that way I don't get a big long list of missing items. And I'll click Next. And I'm prompted for the installation space and location. I'm just going to go with the defaults here and click Next. And the prerequisites are being configured. So the prerequisite check is completed and I've got a couple of errors here. So the first error is there's a pending reboot from a previous installation of a Windows Server role or feature. Well, that's easy enough to take care of. We just reboot the server. So if I look down here, you can see another error. Active Directory Lightweight Directory Service isn't installed on the computer and must be installed before Exchange setup can begin. Now, that sounds kind of funny because we specifically told setup that we wanted to automatically install the prerequisite components. But in actuality, this component is installed. If I open up Server Manager and go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, and I just kind of click my way through this, you can see Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services is installed. And if you look up here, you can see that the destination server has a pending restart. So simply rebooting the server will get rid of 2 of those error messages. Now we do have a third error message that we need to pay attention to. The fully qualified domain name of this computer is missing or empty. Setup cannot continue. So what do we do about that? Well, we need to add a fully qualified domain name. So I'm just going to right click and go to System, and that's going to bring up the System Properties sheet. So if you look right here in the computer name, domain, and workgroup settings section, you can see a link to change settings. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to bring up the System Properties sheet. I'm going to click Change, and typically you would use this dialog box to change the computer name or to make the computer a member of a domain or a workgroup. But you'll notice that we have a button right here called More. If I click on More, we can specify the DNS suffix of the computer. And I'm just going to call this posydemo.com, and I'm going to click OK, and click OK again. And now I'm prompted to restart, so I'll go ahead and click OK to restart and close, and I'll click Restart Now, and the server will reboot. So I'm going to pause the video while I reboot the server, and we'll pick it up here in just a minute. Okay, so my server is rebooted, and as you'll recall, the very first thing that I did at the very beginning of this video was to check DNS name resolution. Because we changed the fully qualified domain name, we need to recheck DNS name resolution. So what I'm going to do is I'm back on my mailbox server. I'm going to open up a command prompt window, and let's ping the server by name. Okay, now the ping succeeded, but remember, we changed the fully qualified domain name, so we need to check that too. So I'm going to repeat the ping, but this time I'm going to add .posydemo.com to the end. And let's try the ping again. And this time the ping failed. So what we need to do is give our mailbox server a way of contacting our Edge server. So the way that I'm going to do that, there are a number of different ways you could do it, but one of the easiest ways is to update the host file. So I'm just going to open up File Explorer, and I'm going to go into C, and then Windows, and then I'll go to System32, and then Drivers, etc. And here's my host file. So I'll open that up with Notepad, and what we need to do is associate the machine's IP address with its host name. So the IP address is 147.100.100.233, and the host name is e2k16edge.posydemo.com, and I'll save this. And now let's repeat the ping. And now I'm getting a reply, so hostname resolution is working, and we can move forward with deploying Exchange on our Edge transport server. So I'm going to pause the video and switch over to that server. Okay, so I'm back on my Edge server, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing that I did a moment ago. I'm going to go into C, and I'm going to go to Exchange Files and run Setup. And I'm just going to breeze through this. I'm not going to worry about the update check. There's the file copy process. And the file copy process is wrapping up. And now setup is initializing. And now we're taken to the introduction screen. So I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I'm going to click Next. I'll accept the license agreement and click Next. I'm not going to worry about using the recommended settings. I'm going to install the Edge transport role, and I'm going to automatically install any Windows Server roles that might be required. I'm going to go with the default installation path. And now we're going into the prerequisite check that you saw earlier. And this time my prerequisite analysis comes back clean. So everything looks good here. There aren't any issues that I have to take care of. So I'm going to begin the installation process by clicking Install. And as you can see, there are 9 steps. So this is going to take a while to complete. So I'm going to pause the video, and we'll pick it up here later on and confirm that setup has completed successfully. And it looks like setup has completed successfully. And you can see that we have a message here telling us that we need to reboot the server in order to complete the installation. So I'm going to wrap up the video here, reboot the server, and we'll pick it up in the next video where I'll talk about setting up an Edge subscription for this new Edge Transport server.